Whenever you hear the word Venezuela, what image can you see in your mind?
On today's exchange rate, 10 US dollars equals about 14 million Venezuelan bolivars.
A bolivar really is worth not much more than the paper it's printed on.
1 box of food per year.
This is for playing cards.
Liliana looks like she's 2, but she's 5.
Venezuelans are dying.
We have no gas.
They sing, but they're hungry.
Children and adults desperately rummaging through rubbish to find something to eat. Food is a luxury for many Venezuelans.
These are the faces of extreme poverty in Venezuela.
Images I show you at the beginning of this video represent what most people think whenever they hear the word Venezuela. However, I need you to have a look at this report. This was a World Bank report which was published on 14th of August 1974. And you can find it on the website of the World Bank even today. According to this report, the World Bank borrowed $500 million from Venezuela. Now, I need you to pay attention to the next paragraph of this page, which is, this loan is the largest ever single borrowing operation of the World Bank. To see what is even crazier, you need to scroll to the 5th paragraph of this report. And there you will see this is the second borrowing in Venezuela in the same year, because in the March of the same year, the World Bank had borrowed 100 million Venezuela bolivars. And this is what you have to understand. At this point, Venezuela currency is one of the strongest currency in the world. By the way, later in this video, I'm going to explain how having one of the strongest currency in the world is one of the reasons why Venezuela fall. However, before we get into that, I want you to imagine a country that is so rich that World Bank have to borrow from it 2 times in a year. And according to this report, such borrowing happened to be the largest of any nation. But if you are surprised that the World Bank is borrowing from Venezuela, you have to remember that this country was the 4th richest country in the whole world as at 1951. Venezuela was richer than France, than Germany, than Canada. Wait for it. In 1951, Venezuela was richer than the United Kingdom, 12 times richer than China, which then led us to what really went wrong. Most of the times when people talk about the reason why Venezuela failed as a country, they usually blame 2 things, and that is socialism and mismanagement.
20 years ago, Venezuelans voted for socialism.
It's a story about epic mismanagement.
What if I tell you that the downfall of Venezuela does not have anything to do with socialism or even mismanagement? Or in other words, what if I say socialism or mismanagement could be the fruit of the poison that killed Venezuela, but the seed of that fruit is something else? Dutch disease is a term economists use to describe a situation whereby a natural resources becomes a curse instead of a blessing for a nation. This situation is more common than most of us are aware of because it has been widely studied among different countries of the world. For example, Australia, the Netherlands, Canada, Indonesia, Russia, Nigeria, Spain and Portugal, in fact, United Kingdom. These and many other countries of the world have experienced Dutch disease at different periods in their national history. But since we are talking about Venezuela in this video, I would like us to use Venezuela as an example of how Dutch disease can destroy a nation. Like every other country that have been affected by Dutch disease, Venezuela started out as an ordinary nation, not rich, but not the poorest country in the world. In the case of Venezuela, that is before 1920s. At this period in the history of countries that have been affected by Dutch disease, the country is going to focus extensively on agriculture and manufacturing. Now, do not forget what I'm about to tell you. During this phase in the life of a nation, manufacturing and agricultural sector are going to employ a whole lot of people. Yes, they will not be paid in thousands of dollars, but they will have job and they will have normal life. Do not forget this point because we are going to need it later in the video. That is manufacturing sector, agricultural sector, and employment. But then this country is going to wake up one day and discover an unbelievable quantity of natural resources. Suddenly, this country is going to start making 50 times more revenue from these natural resources than it can make from manufacturing and agricultural combined together. And this is the beginning of a big problem. You see, in 2004, more than 400 experts came together to write this book. It is titled Encyclopedia of Energy. And in section 5 of this book, while talking about Dutch disease and how it affects countries that have natural resources, the authors wrote this. The booming resource sector was seen as drawing people and capital away from other sectors of economy, such as manufacturing and agriculture. The first thing countries like Venezuela, countries that suddenly get to discover huge amount of natural resources, naturally do is to start focusing extremely on that single sector. And this makes sense if you think about it. Remember what I told you earlier, this new sector suddenly out of nowhere is giving the country 50 times more revenue than manufacturing or agricultural sector. So naturally, such country want to think, what if we can maximize this opportunity? What if we can put more effort, more resources into this sector? Maybe we can get 100 times more revenue from this sector than we are getting right now. It is at this point such a country will start putting more capital, more resources, more human resources, and virtually everything they got into that sector, while they ignore manufacturing or agricultural sector. Then somebody might say, but that does not make sense. In fact, it does make sense. I mean, if you have read this book, The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith, you are going to understand that since 18th century, this book was published in 1776. Since 18th century, the smartest economists in the world have been advising countries and companies to specialize. In fact, Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3 of this book is about division of labor. And essentially, what this book preaches is that countries of the world will do well overall if they can specialize on products or services they have comparative advantage on. That is to say, if there's a product you can produce more than everybody, cheaper than everybody, you should focus on that product. However, by following the advice of Adam Smith and other economists, countries like Venezuela will invest everything they have into that natural resources sector, and they will, in the process, destroy manufacturing, destroy agricultural sector. You would think that is the worst thing that can happen, but there is even something worse that can happen. the same section 5 of this book I have quoted from earlier, the author wrote this: a sharp increase in exports of natural resources often lead to a significant increase in the strength of the national currency. A further meant other exports from the country became more expensive for people who live outside the country. As I've explained earlier, as this country focuses on these natural resources they have, they tend to kill other sectors of the economy, manufacturing, agricultural, and every other sector that can exist in an economy. But even in the process, you are still going to have a few stubborn companies that have maybe some other advantages, and they still try to keep on manufacturing products, keep on creating services and stuff like that, until this second thing happens, which is as this country exports more and more and more natural resources, the currency of that country starts to be increasing in value. And as the currency of that country keep on increasing in value, the products they make in that country become more expensive for the people outside that country, meaning nobody outside the country want to import things from that country. For example, according to this Wikipedia article, by 1937, you will exchange $1 for just 3 Venezuela bolivars. The implication of that is Venezuela was having one of the most valuable currencies in the world. Then the rest of the world cannot import things from that country, again killing the remaining manufacturing or export activities in that country. This is the same reason why the Chinese government keep on devaluing its currency, because as an exporting country, if the Chinese currency keep on rising or increasing in value, it will get to a point where many countries of the world will not be able to import things from that country. If you remember at the beginning of this video, I made a big claim, which is Venezuela did not die simply because of socialism. However, between then and now, I have given you a few analyses, which if you follow, you are going to see that countries like Venezuela will naturally, by default, just walk into socialism. Now, let me explain how that will happen. Remember what I told you here. This country was just ordinary country, having manufacturing sector and agricultural sector and trying to grow those sectors and most importantly, employing millions of people. Then suddenly, that country discovered a natural resources and trying to follow the advice of Adam Smith and other intelligent economists, the country decided to focus all its resources on this lucrative industry, but in the process, it abandoned every other sector, manufacturing, agricultural, or every other sector of the economy. As a result, those sectors are dead. Now, why there could be few companies in those sectors that could still be struggling, trying to export some product? Because the value of the currency of this country is increasing every time, it means export from that country is going to be more expensive, which means eventually every manufacturing or even agricultural activities of that country will be dead. Now we have arrived at where we are going. Do not forget 2 or 3 things I asked you to have in mind at the beginning of this video, and that is manufacturing sector, agricultural sector, and employment. What happened with these 2 sectors of the economy is that they provide a whole lot of jobs. Now, the problem with natural resources, which this country suddenly discovered, is that it tends not to provide a lot of local jobs for the citizens of the country that discover it. Again, I would like to quote from this book, This time around, I want to quote from section 2.3 of the book, which read as follows. Because oil and gas have tended to be primarily export activities, they generate little direct local employment. Now, you can put all of this together and make a sense out of it. In this given country, there used to be 70 million people who used to have job in manufacturing sector before. There used to be 9 million people who used to have job in agricultural sector before. But because of the abandonment and the value of the currency, now 99% of those people have no job. What you have now is a country that is so rich because it is selling billions and billions and billions of natural resources. At the same time, this country has 90% of its citizens not having job because manufacturing sector has been killed, agricultural sector has been killed. At this point, the only way out is socialism because the country has money, people have nowhere to work. What do? You distribute money, you create socialist program to keep people alive and to make people support your government. This is how Venezuela naturally, by default, walks into socialist economy. And then socialism will work for a period of time. I mean, as long as you are still earning a whole lot from your natural resources.
Luego de 4 años, el líder del fallido golpe militar del 4 de febrero del 92 pareciera continuar vigente entre sus seguidores.
But then, one day you wake up and you discover that the prices of your natural resources has crashed in the international market.
Gas prices slowly declining from record highs earlier this summer.
When the price of the natural gas, natural anything you are selling crashes, and that is your entire economy, it means the entire economy, the entire country crashes with it.
Anti-government demonstrators taking on police and government troops in what's being called the final phase of efforts to topple Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro.
There are a few other things I did not have time to explain in this video. One of them is optimism bias. And, optimism bias is the idea that human beings and nations like Venezuela, during the time they are making a whole lot of money, they are having tendency to believe that Christmas will last forever. It happened to individuals, people who make a lot of money waste it because they think, Christmas will last forever. According to this book, another thing that tends to happen to countries like Venezuela is the idea of prestige project. Example of prestige project is when Qatar says they want to spend $200 billion on World Cup. I mean, that is the highest amount of money any country will ever spend on World Cup. And this is a very small country where soccer is not even a big deal. So the question is, why is such a country spending $200 billion to host World Cup? Well, they want to impress the rest of the world. Even though after the World Cup, those stadiums will be there, empty. And the reason why they can do that is because they have oil money. It is at this point somebody may want to ask, okay, you are talking about Dutch disease and how countries like Venezuela discover natural resources and that resources end up killing them. But what about other countries of the world, advanced countries that discover natural resources? Like, of course, US is having oil, massive oil. Why can't oil destroy US economy? Okay, so the answer to that is, it really depends on when. That is, where is a nation when they discover such natural resources? Okay, so let me give you an example of how this happened. Imagine there are two people, Mr. Jude and Mr. James. Mr. Jude had built businesses, had learned how to invest money, and is now having the net worth of $5 million. While the other guy, Mr. James, has never made $10,000 in his entire life. In fact, he is homeless. But then, one day you wake up and you give these two men $50 million, $50 million. Now, what do you think is going to happen to the two men? That exactly is what happened with countries of the world. If you're having a country that has already grown its economy to a point, the manufacturing sector has grown, the agricultural sector has grown, then such country discover natural resources. Such country will have less costs from Dutch disease than a country that is one of the poorest countries of the world, and suddenly they discover massive amount of natural resources. Thank you so much for taking time to watch my video. My name is Steve Courage. If you like this video, you are probably going to like these two other ones recommended to you by YouTube.